Here's a question. What do you see in your mind when I say the words Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius? Well, probably like us, you think about an eruption that covered a city centuries ago that you can now visit and see bodies where they actually died. Well, that is all true, but oh my gosh, visiting Pompeii, the modern and ancient cities, and climbing the rim of the volcano involves so much more, and we tell you all about it in this episode, which is day 3 of our Rome to Amalfi tour with Intrepid Travel. From the sleek, upmarket modern city where we watched the sunset behind Mount Vesuvius from a rooftop bar sipping cocktails to exploring the time capsule that is ancient Pompeii. We share all the things we were blown away with. The ancient city is exactly as it was 2,000 years ago. Can you imagine that? We take you inside some of their houses with all the decorations and artwork intact as it is as vibrant today as it was 2,000 years ago. It's incredible. We walk the cobblestone streets lined with restaurants with their kitchens and mosaic benches and ovens in their original condition. We go through the bustling market and past the forum area, which was once the heart of the city. You will discover with us the arena, the Roman bars, the theatres, shops, factories, basically the whole city. Make sure you stay listening if you want to hear about the place that surprised us the most. So all I'm going to say is it's pretty graphic and definitely not for the easily shocked. Of course, a visit to Pompeii wouldn't be complete without seeing the fugitives or the bodies. We tell you exactly what happened to these people so many years ago. Then day 4, we head off to ascend the summit of Mount Vesuvius and hike around the rim. You will definitely want to hear all about the eruption of 2,000 years ago and some subsequent eruptions and what this active volcano looks like today and what they're doing to make sure there isn't another catastrophe around the corner. Of course, you can see all the pictures and links, including an accurate animation of the eruption that accompany this episode by clicking the link to episode 70 in the podcast description of the player you are now listening on. So please enjoy episode 70, all about Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. Cheers! And welcome to the Beach Travel Wine Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Lyle, and this is the travel podcast for beach-loving, wine-drinking couples over 50.
So if that sounds like you, grab yourself a drink, sit back, relax and listen as we go travelling the world, one wine at a time.
Cheers.
Good morning, Lyle, and welcome to episode 69 of our travel podcast.
Is this the Intrepid tour?
The Intrepid tour. This is, this is the second part of our podcast, all about the tour that we are doing from Rome to Amalfi, and with Intrepid Travel. That's correct. And we're starting today in Pompeii, but not the Pompeii everyone thinks, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's modern Pompeii. So so we had the whole day in Naples, and we tell you about that in episode 68. And then we hop on a train, which took about an hour, and we landed in the heart of modern Pompeii. Now, did you even know modern Pompeii was a city?
No, I didn't, but, it sort of makes sense.
I know, but I felt really stupid because when we, the tour said we're staying in Pompeii, I'm like, we'll just be in a hotel somewhere, on some ruins somewhere. But it was...
Yeah, so did I. I thought the same. I thought it would be just,
But it's quite a modern little city, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's got a population of 23,910.
Yeah.
We arrived around 6 o'clock, I suppose it was, and it was about a 600-metre walk to where we were staying.
Which was right in the heart of the city.
Yeah. When I say it's 600 metres from the railway station, it was also only 600 metres from the archaeological site. So obviously it was really, really, really convenient. And when you look at the booking.com, it actually says in their ratings, the location is 9.4.
Yeah, okay. So,
it was great location. But one of the things that I noticed when we were walking through, and we actually discussed it, was how modern and how contemporary the city was. The roads were roads. They weren't cobblestone streets. They were
wide.
And lots and lots of cafes, and the fit outs in the cafes was really contemporary.
Yeah,
and it was full of young people.
Yeah, sipping their Aperol spritz and things.
Yeah. Look, it just appeared to have a really cool vibe.
I noticed, which is random. I noticed the lounge chairs and the seats they were sitting on outside weren't just your standard tables. There was like dark bottle green velvet chairs and, just funky prints and things, like it just made us think, oh, cool, we're going to come back here and enjoy this. But I guess it would be modern.
Have a drink.
Yeah. I guess it would be modern, though, because if it was, like an ancient city, it would have been, covered by...
destroyed by the Mount Vesuvius eruption.
Yeah, so we head to our hotel.
Yeah, look, we stayed in a family-run 3-star hotel called Hotel Ristorante Ametrano.
Now, the thing, as I've said about Intrepid Travel, is they like to, benefit the local community by staying in these centrally located but family-owned hotels, which is this one was. And they were there. You can see old grandpa was sitting in front of the TV in the reception and stuff.
Oh, yeah, sure. Obviously, they'd had the hotel since its inception. So, look, the hotel was clean.
Yeah, it was great.
It was comfortable, air-conditioned. There was
safe.
TVs, safe, and free Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi, as they call it, in the public areas.
And we had a little balcony, which, you couldn't really call it a balcony, but you could step outside, which overlooked the main street. And out the front of our place, it was sort of almost pedestrian only, big wide street that, was nice to walk up and down. But one of the other benefits of this, Intrepid travel tour that I liked, as we mentioned in a previous episode, was we got to stay 2 nights. Now, when you stay in 2 nights, I know this is a random thing to say, but you can do a bit of washing. Like if you arrive late in one place and then have to get up the next morning, you can't get stuff dry. But here you could just hand wash a few things and hang them out because it was warm, and that was just the benefit of having 2 nights. One of the things I liked.
Yes, and that is true. You are a little obsessive about that sort of thing. But look, we
I don't like to turn my undies inside out if I don't have to, right?
Yeah. So look at the check-in was fine.
Yeah,
they had lifts, although they may be the smallest lifts in the world, but they did have lifts, and we were I think we may have been on the 2nd level. But look, it was great. They actually have a restaurant that operates 7 days a week.
Yeah, dinner and
basically, the menu that I remember was mainly local cuisine, and I had the grilled fish, and was absolutely delicious.
It was nice. We sat outside. Luca organised a table for us, didn't he?
Yeah, Luca again. He took charge, and
Luca, for those who haven't listened to the previous episode, was our Italian guide. And on our tour with us, I probably should mention there's 8 of us plus the tour. There's Luca, as I said, the guide, and then we have Mandy and Christy, some fellow Aussies, Lynn and Cassia, mum and daughter from the UK, and our friends that we were travelling with, Wayne and Anne, and of course us. So it's a nice small group, and by this stage we've all got to know each other, and it's just enhanced the holiday being able to made some brand new friends, which has been fabulous.
Yeah, I think we were really lucky because everybody got on.
Yeah.
So it was really good that way.
Yes.
We had a great dinner, and then after dinner, Leanne and I decided although it was about probably 9 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, it was getting a bit later.
We decided we'd go for a bit of a stroll, which we normally do, and walked around for a while, and then decided to have a nightcap.
Yep, glass of vino.
A glass of, vino blanco, and then we headed back home, and the bed was comfortable. We slept well.
Ready for the next day. Now, the hotel also has breakfast, which, what did you say, was a Italian buffet sweet breakfast or something?
Yeah, on the website, they call it a sweet Italian buffet breakfast served in the breakfast room. And the breakfast room, because when we ate outside for dinner on more al fresco, and yet in the morning breakfast was inside. Look, it was great. No problem.
So we were excited because all the group, because we were going to see the ancient site of Pompeii. Now, once again, let's talk about what we thought the ancient site of Pompeii was, because I'm not trying to sound ignorant here, but most of the stuff I've heard or seen about Pompeii, I mean, everyone knows there was a volcanic eruption that covered the city, but the things that you think that you're going to see was basically some old ruins and some bodies. That was what I thought it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I think the emphasis is on the bodies.
Yes.
But as it turns out, that's a very, very, very small part of the actual exhibition.
Sure. And we didn't see
the ruins, I suppose.
And we didn't actually see that that to the end, did we?
No, that's correct.
So we're about to head into the archaeological site of Pompeii, and let's tell people what you can expect to see in there.
Yeah, look, Luca had again organised all the entry tickets and introduced us to our local guide, Clemate. Clemate was excellent,
passionate, very knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, and so when the actual eruption happened, that was 79 AD. Pompeii was a Roman colony. Now, at the time, Pompeii was a wealthy town with a population of about 11,000, enjoying many fine buildings and luxurious private houses and lavish decorations, furnishings, and works of art. It was originally founded by the Greeks in the 7th and to the 16th century BC. Then, under the Romans, Pompeii underwent a process of urban development, which accelerated in the Augustan period from about 30 BC. New buildings, including amphitheatres, gymnasiums, swimming pools, 2 theatres, and at least 4 public bars. An aqueduct provided water to the public bars, to more than 25 street fountains and many private houses and businesses. There were at least 31 bakeries, each with wood-burning ovens, millstones, and sales counter. There were nearly 100 inns or snack bars in which hot food and drinks were sold, with rooms where customers could eat their food. Also, there was wool processing was well developed, with 13 workshops that worked the raw materials, 7 that did the spinning, 9 the dyeing, and 18 the washing.
I wonder what they made with that wool. That'd be interesting.
Well,
wouldn't it?
Clothes, I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah.
So, so
it was a huge city, and as well as they had temples and churches, markets.
They were all based around the Forum.
Yeah,
which
Forum
is
in the centre there,
right towards the centre. So then, but the first thing we really saw was the arena or the amphitheatre. So what did you think about that?
Well, it was a huge. So what we're trying to say, it was like back 2,000 years ago, it's like a massive bustling city. It had everything. It was very sophisticated. With the restaurants and things. But as we entered, we saw the big arena, which is like the Colosseum and like the arena in Verona. But I was surprised because it's probably one of the best kept. Like obviously because it was under ash all those years, and you get to go inside it. But I was taken back by the the stone walls, not brick walls, and the gardens and the trees and the plants that sort of gave it a real I didn't expect it to have greenery, I guess.
Yeah. Look, the actual amphitheatre is the oldest among those known from Roman times, so it's nowhere near the size of the Colosseum.
No.
It was built in 70 BC and could hold up to 20,000 spectators. And the actual description of it, the external staircase with 2 flights provide access to the upper steps, and a downward corridor provides access to the lower steps. The arena is separated from the area intended for the spectators by a parapet, which is decorated with frescoes of gladiators that you can still recognise.
Yeah, still see today. And I guess the thing, it's hard to sort of, get across is everything we're going to tell you about that we saw, up to 250 years ago was covered in metres of ash. It had been forgotten after the explosion.
I think it was between, they talk about between 6 and 7 metres of, basically Parmesan, I suppose.
We are going to talk about Mount Vesuvius, but I just want to say like the eruption took about, 18 hours to cover this city, which, isn't that long to have everything, completely covered, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the site, they've been uncovering it now for, as I said, 250 years, and it's only a third of it so far.
Yeah, they've only got 2/3 of it. So once we've gone through the amphitheatre, and as I said, it was really impressive and really well preserved. Then we strolled, as we talked about, through the Forum, And the forum area is basically where, as Lan said, it's got all the religious buildings. I think it was the Temple of Apollo. Then you've got also the markets, the law courts, the administration buildings, just like any modern city, basically. And then the thing that sort of blew me away was the baths. Now, Pompeii has 5 public bath complexes, a clear sign of the importance of the custom of going to the bath, not just for reasons of hygiene and relaxation, but also to meet people and socialising. Now, these baths, the same as the ones in Rome, they have separate areas for male and female. And, so it was...
And you can still see some of the decorations and things on the wall.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Once again, these were completely covered.
And you can still, they had the steam rooms, they had the saunas, they had the whole thing going on. So again, how sophisticated were they? They were just incredible. Now, the laundries to me really sort of, how can I put it? It was a surprise. Now, Pompeii had 12 ancient laundries. These were used for washing laundry and degreasing fabrics made from yarn that had just been spun. Spun, yeah. Laundry workers who were amongst almost exclusively slaves had to tread on the fabrics for hours in a liquid containing animal and human urine, considered ideal for treating fabrics. Now, this is where it gets a bit, how's your father? The urine tax in Pompeii. Urine was valued for its ammonia content, the natural enemy of grease and dirt, valuable for laundering clothes and whitening teeth.
Yeah. And in Venice, blonding your hair.
Correct. That's correct. The lower classes urinated into pots which were emptied into cesspools. Wealthy buyers of the urine paid the tax for this valuable liquid. Now, this is the really untidy bit. Urine remained a popular mouthwash till the 18th century. So
I'd rather have no teeth.
So would I, but
so these are all the laundries that you can see around the city.
Yeah, and I remember you saying to me you were really blown away with the private houses.
I was, but the first thing though that I was amazed by were the streets themselves. They were straight. They were,
that's right.
And they were built up like they had gutters.
Yeah.
So the paths. So you've got these streets, and then you've got the footpaths on either side. And on the sides of the footpaths are the laundries, the shops, the restaurants, the houses, right?
Yeah.
And they used to have some problem with water sometimes.
I don't know whether it was just normal rain or whatever, but they had stepping stones.
So the pedestrians could get across, but also they left gaps big enough.
Yeah, for the carts.
Yeah, the wagon wheels to go across. And I've got some really cool photos of all this stuff we're talking about to go with episode 70. And if you, as I said, go to the player that you're on now and click on the link to episode 70, you will see all the pics. And I've got a really good one of the street just looking, you can imagine it just being a bustling street where people are going about their everyday business up and down, and the shops on each side. But as you just said, the private houses blew me away too.
Yeah.
And I've just got to keep going back to the fact that, like you go to places like Rome where you've got all this stuff that's, been there for centuries still. But in Pompeii, this stuff's only been out in the air for 250 years. Like, it's been covered over. So as I said before, it's like a time capsule. So if you look at some of these houses, they're like double-story houses. And as you look at the entry hall, they've got mosaic floors, and they're pristine condition.
Yeah, you got staircases.
Yep, and the poles in the middle with more mosaics on them.
Yeah, the columns. Yeah,
the columns, and there's even a sunken living room area. And then you can actually go into some of these places, the bigger houses that have their own courtyards, and like you're walking around the courtyards with the columns and the gardens in the middle, and you can just. It blows my mind that you can see what it was like 2,000 years ago. Like,
yeah, it's hard to actually explain how how my impression of it was. It was like I was sort of blown away. I think mainly because, again, we go back to that sophistication word. You just don't expect the city to be that sophisticated.
And, like looking in some of these houses, the actual paintings on the walls,
Yep.
like they're not, they're like, I remember this one, and I've got photos of it. It's black, it's red with black figures on it. And it's as vibrant today as it would have been 2,000 years ago.
I actually questioned Clemente.
Yeah.
And I said, because he said that's the original. I said, well, that's not reproduced. He said, no, that's the original.
Yeah.
And
that was one
wow.
example in the whole city of these things that you can see all over the place. One of the things that we saw in Pompeii was quite interesting to our tour that we're on and everyone on there. But I have to tell you that two people, and one of them was on the tour with us, so I'm not going to mention names, Annie, but there is a part of...
Well, they'd been there before.
Right. And the people I talked to had been there before, and they said there was one thing out of all of this, everything they saw in this amazing city that they remembered from when they visited, right? And that's what we're going to tell you about now. Yes?
So maybe you're saying it's more about them than actually what the actual
maybe, but I think
object was.
I think because it's quite I don't know, different.
In your face.
In your face. And I'm just going to also put a bit of a warning here, like that we are going to talk about some things that are a bit risque, and I have pictures to back it up that you'll want to go and have a look at.
Yeah, I think what Leanne's saying is that the Pompeii population were very progressive.
Some of them were, yes.
In relation to their sex lives.
Okay, so go on, tell people about it.
Look, it's everywhere. You can't miss it. Like you're walking along, and Clemente was pointing it out. Prostitute houses had penis carvings on the houses with their names and how much their services cost.
And they also had penis carvings on the ground as arrows and on the walls pointing to where the brothels were. Now,
correct.
And that's what my friends told me they remembered was
that was the only thing they remembered.
Of Pompeii, the only thing I remember were the giant penises on the walls and on the roads.
Now, brothels had frescoes painted on the walls with what was available and the cost. Now, one of the ones we saw, there was a boy and a girl with a customer, and there was, seriously, there was nothing left to the imagination.
I've got pictures of, basically, they had, like, around the walls, there would have been, maybe 4 on each wall, and they're all sort of pictures, probably, 50 centimetres by 50 centimetres.
Basically, the menu.
Right. Okay. And there's a bed and there's a boy and a girl or whatever's going on. They've got pictures of everything that, you could choose, as you said, a sexual menu. And these pictures are in pristine condition, and they're inside these places that have got the penises pointing on the walls and on the road. So, yes, quite
in your face,
vivid, and don't leave anything to the imagination. So
I did a little bit of research there.
I bet you did.
And the La Pana, which is the Wolf's Den, was the official brothel. That was 2 stories with 5 bedrooms on each story. Right. So, look, they say it's the oldest profession in the world. That's what they say. So, but look, seriously, it was so in your face. You're sort of walking around going, what?
Yeah, is that a...
Yeah. And it was everywhere. Yeah. It wasn't just one part.
So go and have a look. But with these photos that I've got of the pictures on the wall and the penises on the wall, the outside of the buildings and on the road, there were statues that had gigantic penises.
Oh, I forgot all about that. That's true.
And I've got a photo of that. Well, so as magnificent as David was, Michelangelo's David, and how small he was, this guy is like, it's
ginormous.
It's hilarious. So we're going to remember that about Pompeii too, because
sure, because you just can't miss it. But as you said earlier, Leanne, that I found going to Pompeii actually enhanced the rest of the trip to Italy. In that, we've been to Florence, we've been to Rome, and we've seen all these magnificent monuments. But this is really the first time we actually have seen how they lived,
Yeah.
and they were a very, very sophisticated.
And how they, how elaborately they lived, their houses and, the decorations and and the how accurate their streets were. It was in a grid formation. Like it was amazing.
Well, even how clean they are.
Yeah.
Like as in,
and the fountains where you get your water.
Yeah. You had a drink out of one of the fountains. So obviously the 25 fountains. You can still drink out of them. They're still supplied by the original aqueduct. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Now, we spent, as part of the tour, look, if you're going to Pompeii, I believe you should get a guide. I mean, you can get maps, but the amount of information and the swiftness of the way you move through the site with a guide is to take you to the main things you want to see, and then to some of the secret places that you might not find on your own that easily, is definitely worth it getting a guide, don't you?
Oh, look, and our guide, he was fabulous. And you've also got Luca as well, and he's adding comments of what he knows about it. So look, it was a fabulous experience,
and it's certainly one of the highlights of the tour with Intrepid Travel that we did. And as you mentioned, Luca, well. Our main tour guide left, and we all went, because we'd been there for hours and it was a hot day, and we all went there's a cafe there.
That's correct, yeah.
So you can, get lunch, have a cold drink, go to the toilet, that sort of stuff,
You can have a beer, which I thought was impressive.
Yeah, good. And then Lucas said, well, I know it's hot, but there are some other things I'd like to show you.
That's correct.
And we were like, sure. Everyone on our tour absolutely loved Pompeii. And we couldn't get enough of it. So certainly amazing that this has been buried all these years, 2,000 years under bloody meters of dirt. It's amazing.
And as a sort of the Clemente bid his farewell, and as Leanne said, Luca sort of took over. One of the things that everybody, I'm sure, or most people would recognise is the bodies of Pompeii.
I remember Christy, our gorgeous friend Christy, she said, what's everyone feeling? How are they going to feel about Pompeii today? And I said, I think it might be a bit disturbing seeing the bodies. But it actually wasn't disturbing, because after you'd seen everything else, even if you hadn't seen the bodies, it was, there's quite a few actually around in glass cabinets around the place as well. But the ones that we wanted to see are the ones that were actually in the position they were found in. So this is where they died 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, and look, the local, what they call is the fugitives. Now, why they call it that, I can only assume it's because they're running away from the eruption. Archaeologists, how do you say that?
Archaeologists.
That's the one. Have uncovered 1,150 bodies.
Yeah.
Now, when the skin and tissues of these bodies decayed, they left a void in the layer of ash around them in the exact shape of their final moments.
So what they did was they made casks of these.
Yeah. So
some of them are lying there with children.
Yeah, look, it's
in fetal positions, and there's, what would there be, about 11 or 12 of them there together? Yeah,
and that display.
Yes. And I have a photo of all of those. So once again, episode 70, Beach Travel Wine. Go and have a look, because I've got some really nice photos. Probably probably disturbing photos.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to see them.
But it's sort of one of those things that if you did find that uncomfortable, it's only a very small portion of the rest of what you see.
I would find that most people might find the penises more uncomfortable than the bodies.
Yeah, and there's probably more penises than bodies. But I think that, look, it takes about, I think, probably 3 to 4 hours, you reckon, to do it?
Yeah, to do it properly, for sure. Yeah, I agree. So that was our morning around the Pompeii archaeological site. After an amazing morning in the Pompeii archaeological site. It's always going to remain one of my favourite things in Italy, just because it was so amazing what we saw. Luca had organised for us to go to a authentic restaurant for lunch. Yeah.
Yep, it was the restaurant was called Campona.
Campona. Now I do feel a bit guilty because he took us there because you can have this whole experience of dressing up in ancient Roman clothes
and togas and that sort of
right,
stuff. Yeah.
And you can have like the 4-course lunch and which is the authentic food, and then you get the wine in a little
pottery.
Yeah, I've got a photo of that as well. Yeah,
it's a huge pottery with handles, mug, and you have the local wine. Back in the time,
it was just so hot in this, like that in the restaurant.
But it was also like it was very, very hot day.
Yeah, but there was no aircon or anything.
No, that's right. So we'd sort of spent, about 4 hours at Pompeii, the actual site, and we were all perspiring. And
we just wanted water and to strip off, really. So, but Luca did get dressed up.
Yes, he
did have the food, and we all got to have a little look at it and sample it and try the wine in the pottery mug, which was nice. But that was a nice little debrief, wasn't it, of our morning, and everyone was sort of laughing about the penises and the pictures on the walls, and then talking about the bodies and like just how amazed they were at the whole site and everything, weren't they?
Yeah, well, I think everybody was becoming a lot more comfortable with each other. Yeah. So talking about the penises on the roads and that sort of stuff, and that wasn't all we talked about, but
it was quite funny.
I think everybody, to be honest, was super impressed with what they just experienced. Now, Leanne and I didn't have the traditional authentic Roman banquet, but what we did have, Leanne had the pork cheeks.
That was divine.
And I had the lamb shanks. And seriously, so far, Luca, 10 out of 10 for each restaurant that he picked so far. The food was magnificent. The service was great.
And that's another benefit of being on tour. You don't even have to think about where you're going to eat, So then we had a bit of a not problem, but we're trying to get a taxi back. It wasn't that far back to the because we come out a different exit to where we went in, and it was further away, and we were all so hot we'd walk thousands and thousands of steps. That Lucas said, "I'll get us all a taxi back." Well, Lynn and Cassia decided they'd walk. And, we had trouble getting a taxi, but eventually Luca got us one, didn't he?
Yeah.
And
we would have found it difficult without Luca.
Yes.
So that was good.
And we had a free afternoon where you and I had a bit of a afternoon nap. We were, in the aircon, didn't we?
Yeah, it was good.
And later on, we did something really special, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, after our poor friend Wayne, he had a bit of problems walking around in the heat, didn't he? So
poor old Wayne, he had a bit of chafing.
Just as
and to be perfectly frank, I had a little bit too, and there's nothing worse. But Wayne had it worse than me, and he had a very, very strange walk. But he went out that. We all went out that night to a very, very, very special place. So
I guess the reason
I
brought up Wayne, sorry to go back, was just think about what you're wearing, walking around in the heat for 4 hours, because it can cause problems, yeah?
Sure.
Yes. But yes, so we went out and not all of us went. I think Luca and Lynn stayed back at the hotel, but the rest of us headed off because the girls. So see, that's another thing, traveling with a group of people, especially young, vibrant people, they find the rooftop bars and places to go. I didn't even know there was a rooftop bar. So we followed them.
Yes, we did.
And we ended up, what was the name of that place?
It was called the actual hotel was the Habitat 79.
Yeah.
And the actual bar, and they obviously showed a lot of imagination, it was called the Roof Bar.
Okay. And how beautiful was that?
Oh, look, it was like you had a fabulous view. You were actually.
I'm going to talk about the view.
But had some photos.
But the plush furnishings, and I think Wayne and maybe Christy sat down. They had these big green bean bags, and but there was a what was the word? A stipulation that the only reason we could stay was
it was a €25 minimum
per person.
per person.
that you
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
spend. And
So Leanne and I knew we wouldn't have a problem
well, I
spending
think the
that much.
cocktails were €20, so it was never going to be an issue.
Yeah, and
So,
we had something. We
yeah,
had a like a little snack, and well, I think it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but do remember it was beautiful.
yeah, it was great.
Also, it was a lobster thing.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Taco.
Yep.
That's what it was. It was a lobster taco,
So
and it was magnificent.
It was, and I actually made some new friends. I went over to take some photos.
That's
and
right, you did.
was chatting to some other Aussies over there. But let me tell you about this rooftop bar, and besides the furnishings, and we're there after such a great day, and everyone's in this great mood, and we're all chatting, having a lovely time, nice cocktails, funky food, and the sun setting. Now the sun is setting over Mount Vesuvius. So from this rooftop bar, you've got the panoramic views of Mount Vesuvius, which, when you hear about all the damage it did 2,000 years ago, you can't imagine it because it's just this gorgeous big mountain. And as I said, the sun setting, and in front of Mount Vesuvius, you can just see the archaeological site. It was getting quite dark, but, it was right in front of it. So I got the best videos, but also photos of the sunset, and all of us as a group sitting up the top of this rooftop bar. It was just the perfect way
to finish the
day.
It was.
And so definitely and that was a benefit of staying in Pompeii. You got to see this. Like imagine if you had to hop on a bus at 1:00 and head back, back to where you're staying. Like we could just take it all in, and I think that added to the atmosphere of the whole Pompeii thing, don't you?
Sure, and I don't think that particular rooftop bar is the only rooftop bar. Look, it's a really sophisticated city. Like it's really, really nice, comfortable, safe. It was beautiful.
Yeah, you could go there even if it didn't have the archaeological site.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a great place. All right, so enough of the rooftop bar. We're going to head home because we are heading into the next day, which is day 4 of our Intrepid travel tour. And we're actually going to go up to Mount Vesuvius. Imagine this. It's a normal day in 2,000 years ago in August in 79 AD. It's 8 a.m. in the morning. There's clear skies, a few clouds around, nothing seems afoot. But all of a sudden, the birds start to get a bit funny, some dogs start to bark, and you start to see some smoke just starting to come out the top of the Mount Vesuvius. I guess you don't think much of it. It's a volcano. But then there's a bit of a shake, a bit more smoke, and by 1:00, there's more smoke, right? And so that's sort of, the 5 hours there. And about 1:00, the top blows off the top of the mountain, and it's the first phase of the explosion, and it sends debris and ash, everything up into the air, about up to 30 kilometers into the stratosphere. So it's gone from nothing at 8:00 to that, and then it just gets worse from there. The sky gets covered in grey. There's earthquakes, and by 18 hours later, basically Pompeii is covered, the volcano's blown, and it is spread molten ash and pumice stone meters thick over the surrounding area. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to understand that there was 2 main towns that were affected by the eruption.
Everyone knows Pompeii.
Everybody knows Pompeii, but there's another city, much smaller, which is 18.5 kilometres away. So
what's it called?
And it's called Herculaneum.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Herculaneum, yeah.
Right.
And now that was 18.5 kilometres away from where Vesuvius was. So that just gives you an idea of how big the eruption was.
It was a whole mountain that then went into 2. If you look at Mount Vesuvius now, you can see it's 2 peaks, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. So it's gone from. It blew the whole lot up.
Up to 30 kilometers in the air. Now, so our tour was to go to Mount Vesuvius and do the crater rim walk and the summit climb, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and so we leave our hotel.
Yeah.
Chuck our bags in our private vehicle.
Yeah.
And we drive, I guess, I don't know how far up, but where everybody gets out to walk that last.
Basically the car park.
Yeah, but I don't know how far up the mountain it is. But from there you have to walk. Now, there's a bit of security there. They've got limited numbers going into Mount Vesuvius. The guide that we had, what was his name?
Stefano.
He was brilliant. I mean, I didn't know that someone could know so much about rocks and stuff just walking around. Like, he'd pick up handfuls of the little stones, and he'd pick out things in them. And you're like, that's just grey rock, but there was little sparkly bits, and he drew diagrams in the gravel that was so amazingly simple to understand.
Yeah, in relation to how the layers of the actual geological formation
and what happened.
Yeah. So he was really, really good, very friendly. He was a bit disappointed that the government had come in and told them that they could only have limited numbers.
Well, he's like, like, who says 9,000, who says 10,000, like he said, and half of them haven't even been up the mountain. But I have to say, like, it was a 45-minute walk up was the description, and it wasn't an easy walk. Actually, it was harder coming down, because even though it's a wide path, it is loose gravel and ash, volcanic ash, so it's quite slippery. So make sure you've got some good hiking shoes, or shoes with good grip on them.
Even maybe, as much as we laugh about the poles,
cowboy, you.
Okay, I laugh about the poles.
Yeah.
And I admit, I have no reason why I should laugh about them, but that particular walk, and especially coming down, to have a support pole, would have made it a little bit more comfortable.
Yes. So we arrived, we were walking up with Stefano, yes?
Yeah.
And as I said, we're stopping. Luckily, he's got a backpack full of rocks on, hasn't he? So he's stopping, he pulls out this, rock probably 15 centimetres in diameter, and he's telling you about this rock, and he puts it back in his backpack. So he's basically running up this hill with, an extra probably 20 kilos on his back, and we're all sort of, well, not all, everyone, but we're following him up. And he'd stop, like it was sort of zigzag. He'd stop at, every little sort of turn around so he could explain something else to us. Now, on the way up, the mountains are covered in, beautiful green grass and flowers. I've got some beautiful photos, but he points out previous lava flows that you can see. And it's, it's like a road really, and it's black, a dead area where nothing grows. Eventually it comes back, but it does take a while. So you can see, these lava tracks, which are fascinating to me to see that they, from years ago, because the last eruption was in 1944. Yeah, so that was the last time it was active. Yeah, so although we had a friend or actually sister-in-law, Bronnie, they went in 2016, and she said that they couldn't go up because the volcano was a bit rumbly was what she said. So, they're obviously keeping a good eye on the volcano.
I think there was even one in the early 1900s, early 1900s, another eruption. So, like, when you think about it, say that's 2 in the last 100 years.
Yes.
Like, that's a bit, how's your father?
But I loved the walk up there. I didn't know what to expect. So you get up to the top, and you're at the crater, right? Which is which blew. Now, what's the size? It's massive, isn't it? The size of it. Yeah,
the crater and the actual size of the peak of the mountain is 1277 meters. The crater circumference is 450, and it's 450 meters, and the depth is 300 meters.
Yeah, so I've got some really good photos, and I've got a nice group photo of our Intrepid travel group all together right at the top of Mount Vesuvius. And there is one where there's still steam coming out of the volcano.
Sure.
Not a lot, but it is there.
I think you got photos of that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've got lots of photos up there. And you can generally see 360-degree views of the Bay of Naples, although it was a bit foggy this day, but I guess when you're up at nearly 1,300 metres, you're going to come across fog, aren't you?
Sure.
But you can walk maybe halfway around the rim of the crater. You can't go all the way. There's a stop. There's like a little observatory place And there's tours running all the time. So if you want to go up your own, you can do a tour from the top around the rims, But I think what we did was amazing. And once again, it's just part of the tour because we learnt so much about volcanoes and how it erupted and what happened. Now, in the show notes to this episode 70, I'm going to put a link to an animation of the eruption. And it's set sort of like you're in Pompeii looking back at Mount Vesuvius. And the video goes for about 8 minutes, but it's worth having a look at. It's already had over 28 million views. So it's such a great representation, and it just gets you in. It's really fascinating. So go and have a look at that. As I said, you'll find in the podcast player you're listening on, in the description to this episode 70, you'll find a link back to the show notes for that. So, or just go to Beach Travel Wine and find the latest podcast and you'll see it there. So anything else you want to tell us about the...
Yeah, I suppose really what I want to talk about now is how detailed Stefano, our guide, went into actually what had happened. So there was a major earthquake about 17 years prior to the volcano eruption, which obviously then altered
what happened underneath.
Happened underneath. What do they call that? Subterranean slabs.
Yep.
And as Leanne said, that the actual explosion was that intense that it blew the top off the mountain, so that now you see two peaks.
Well, they're saying it was as strong as the bomb on Hiroshima.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, just to be
aware, it's actually the fourth strongest eruption in the world ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you say it went up 30 kilometres, was it?
They're saying between 15 and 30 kilometres into the stratosphere. That's when it blew.
So into the stratosphere. So that's amazing. So now, just to make you aware, there's two parts to it. There's the magna, which was 8 kilometres below the surface. The magna for the molten rock, that is underground, and lava molten rock is that molten rock that breaks the surface, right? Now, the temperature of the magna, this is 8 kilometres underneath the surface, was between 1,300 and 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's hot.
And now, the temperature of the lava, obviously, which breaks the surface, was 1,300 to 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that at the maximum, there's only 200 degrees difference, which doesn't sound that much. But when you consider that 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit is 704 degrees centigrade. Celsius. It's hot. Now, the eruption lasted about 18 hours.
Yes, it did.
It engulfed the city of Pompeii with ash.
Yes.
In about 10 to 20 minutes. So it went for 18 hours, but it was covered. So when it blew, it blew. Pompeii was destroyed by rain of ash and lapillus. Now, lapillus is the unconsolidated volcanic fragments that are ejected during the volcanic explosion. So that was what Leanne was talking about before, when these rocks in flames as big as basketballs, probably bigger.
Some were bigger. And you can see some of them on actual Mount Vesuvius, and there's the cross section, and you can tell they're from from inside the volcano, from the cross section of what's inside them, and they call them like volcanic bombs, I think. But I think, I don't know if we did say this, most people in Pompeii died from asphyxiation though.
Yeah, derived of oxygen.
Yeah, so it was because the air, obviously they couldn't breathe. And then everything was destroyed in fires, and you'll see that in the animation from these lava balls and bombs hitting, and which is pretty awful.
But it would have been horrific, and the interesting, because no one would have really known what was going on. You could turn around and say the locals would have known that there was a volcano there, but they'd never experienced a volcano. No. So all of a sudden this thing just explodes. But the interesting thing about the comparing Pompeii and Herculaneum is that even though it was 18.5 kilometres, which I've said they're separated by 18.5 kilometres, the main cause of death in Herculaneum was excessive temperature rather than the gas inhalation of the lager-related accident. So basically, their blood boiled.
And that was to do with, I remember our guide saying, the water rushed in where the void was with the lava, and then when it hit the lava, the steam and the heat that came from that, was what caused the deaths down in that other place.
Yeah, you can't say it either.
No.
Good. Yeah, but it starts with H.
Yes.
Yeah, so scholars estimate that there were about 1,200 people living in, 12,000 people living in Pompeii and almost as many in surrounding regions. Around 2,000 people died in Pompeii and 300 unknown to have died in the city starting with H.
Very good. You'd expect with the history of the volcano that there wouldn't be anyone living anywhere near it today, but it's actually regarded as one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world because, get this, 3 million people live near enough to be affected by an eruption. Can you get that? With at least 600,000 in the danger zone. It's the most densely populated volcanic region in the world.
Yeah, I'd hate to be trying to get insurance.
Yeah, you said
contents insurance or house insurance. I mean,
do you live near a volcano? Yes.
Well, I think it's crazy, but it is still active. The Vesuvius Observatory carries out control of seismic volcanic area through a network of seismic stations.
You'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah. When an appointed set of geological activities occurs, an eruption warning is issued.
Right.
Drafted in 1995, two national commissions set up in 1991 and 1993 to assess the risk involved in the Vesuvius eruption and plan the response to any emergency. What Stefano said is the biggest problem is if there is an eruption
People
what
panic.
they need to control is the people panic.
I also remember him saying that they've worked out, if they think it's, dangerous and they need to get out, they need about 3 days is what they estimate to get people away.
Yeah, so they don't wait till the last minute.
No, yeah. So I guess then you might get insurance. I don't know. Anyway, did you enjoy Mount Vesuvius?
Oh, look, I think it's a package deal. I loved Pompeii. I thought that was absolutely amazing. I think any trip to Italy, you've got to go. I think the fact that we did it with a tour guide and we did it with Luca, we just made it so easy.
Yes.
And Vesuvius, as I said, it's just a package deal. But I think you definitely need to do Pompeii first.
Yeah, okay. And you definitely need to be prepared for that sort of steep walk, but it's certainly worth it.
Yeah? Sure.
And I would agree with you. I think it definitely should be a package deal, but pretty cool being up the top of a volcano and seeing into the crater and, learning about it I enjoyed that.
Yeah, they complemented each other. That's all you could say.
But... And I agree with you, like having a tour guide and being on a tour, because we saw people arriving at Vesuvius and they were turned away because they didn't have tickets. Like you just think you'd be able to buy tickets and go up.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was surprising. Yeah. That was really probably the first time we'd actually seen that. Now, just be aware too, they say that there's toilets, which there are at the car park, but some of our...
I went in and to use the toilet and he said you had to buy something. So I paid €2 for some muesli bar and the toilets were disgusting. And I think I was the first one to go in, so everyone after me got it even worse. Like it was dreadful.
Did you make a mess?
Well, no, it's just like there's no flushing or anything. So like,
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant.
Okay.
But that's probably not a nice way to end the podcast, really. So let's move on. Day 4 of our tour with Intrepid Travel with all our friends, and I think another benefit of traveling in a small group like this was we're hopping on the bus. And we're heading to our next stop, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, but you get to share it with all these people. I mean, you and I, it's nice. We share, we take our photos and, telling family about it. But how nice to share these amazing experiences with, some old friends of Wayne and Anne, but also our new friends. I really enjoyed that part of it. So I'm going to put a link to Intrepid Travel and the tour that we actually did, because I just think it's, one of the best things you could do in the show notes. Now, I'm also going to put some other things, links in there, because I want you to go to the show notes to go with this episode 70. I'm going to have photos of the bodies that, or what do you call them? Not the refugees, the fugitives, the rooftop bar, the volcano, obviously the ruins, also all those pornographic pictures that we took. I'm going to have, they're all in there. So it's worth going to have a look at the map, because you'll see where Pompeii is in relation to where we stayed in our hotel and where it is in relation to Mount Vesuvius. There's so much to go and have a look at with episode 670, of this podcast at beachtravelwine.com. But before we finish, I am going to get in first, because my favourite place to have a glass of wine was the rooftop bar. And you?
Probably the same. However, I think the dinner that we had the first night at the hotel, the food was just brilliant, and I think
in that main area.
I think we may have had a Chianti Classico Reserva for with my lamb shank. No, that was the restaurant, the fish, and it was it was beautiful. Look, I thought it was great. But are you going to mention something regarding a movie we watched?
Oh, look, I've got a couple of things. Before we recorded this podcast, I wanted to see if I could watch the movie Pompeii, because there was actually a movie made which was pretty good, apparently, called Pompeii. But it was not available for free. But the one I found on the movie on Prime was made in 2014. That should have been the first red flag. It was called Apocalypse Pompeii, and the story was like an old CIA agent or whatever, has to rescue his family from an eruption in Pompeii. And I'm like, oh well, we'll get to see the mountain, and we'll get to see the ruins. It was the worst movie we've ever seen, but because we were so invested in it, we couldn't leave it.
I think only because we'd been to Pompeii and we knew
it wasn't even in Pompeii. It was filmed in Bulgaria.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, so I don't know the point of mentioning that. So if you want to,
neither do I. But it was, it was the worst movie I've ever seen.
So if you want a movie to watch, it's called Apocalypse Pompeii. It's on Prime. You get a good laugh. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, they're what are these? The effects.
Oh, the special effects.
Special
those jumping
effects
out of helicopters.
were disgraceful.
Anyway, so we've left Mount Vesuvius. We're in our private transfer vehicle. We're all buzzing from our day. We're tired because we've just walked up the mountain, and we are off to our next stop where we're spending 2 nights, and that's coming up in episode 71. But I'll give you a bit of a teaser. It's one of the most beautiful places in Italy that people fall in love with. We had 2 nights in Sorrento.
It was magnificent.
And we went to the Isle of Capri. So there's all sorts of funny stories coming up about singing in a boat and jumping off the boats, and the most amazing restaurant I think we went to, even though the food wasn't that good, but the whole atmosphere was amazing, that we're going to tell you about, and that's coming up in episode 71. Anyway, that's the end of episode 70, all about Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. So we will see you next week. So it's goodbye from me.
Arrivederci, Leonita.